With Luna's price down all the way to $5, at one point having seen $1, a lot of people are starting to basically come to the conclusion that this is the end of Luna. In today's video, I wanted to do a follow-up on yesterday's video, give you guys my updated thoughts, read to you what the CEO of Luna itself said, and tell you guys what I'm going to be doing going forward, as this has definitely become one of the worst bloodbaths I've seen from a top 10, top 15 crypto in the history of this market. So what we're just going to do, we're going to jump right into what Do Kwon said. Of course, he is the CEO, the owner of Luna and the overall Terra ecosystem. And I just want to let you guys know what he said. Then I'm going to talk about what I think, because this is definitely getting a lot worse than I expected it to. So basically, he starts off just saying that he understands that the last 72 hours have been pretty rough and that he is going to be here to work with us through this. Then he goes ahead in the third thread here and basically just gives a breakdown of how the peg stabilization mechanism does work, all of which we have covered in the last video. So definitely do go check that out if you are new here. I will link it down in the description below. But going forward, what he says is a current review of the situation is that UST is currently trading at 50 cents, a significant deviation from its intended peg at $1. Now, of course, due to that and due to the overall massive sell-off that we did see from, UST itself, that has led Terra down to about $4 to $5, with its overall market cap sitting right around 3.7 billion, which in comparison to UST's market cap currently being at 7 billion, that definitely is quite worrying due to the overall pegging and the stabilization mechanisms that are in place, in which we did talk about, again, all in last videos, which was one of my major concerns here. But I want to talk about going forward. So at this point, the price stabilization mechanism is absorbing UST supply, over 10% of the total supply, but the cost of absorbing so much stablecoins at the same time has stretched out the on-chain swap spread to 40%, and Luna price has diminished quite dramatically, absorbing the arbitrages. Now, something we also have to consider is the fact that due to the fact that the mechanism works in a way in which you can basically go in and swap one UST for $1 worth of Luna, and it's going to burn that UST and mint that Luna, one has to understand that as we are seeing the overall supply getting absorbed, because so much UST burning is happening, an equal amount of Luna minting is happening at the same time. Now, considering the fact that demand for Luna is diminishing quite substantially, but the supply of Luna is increasing quite dramatically, that is a perfect formula in basic economics for us to see the price collapse pretty catastrophically. Now, before anything else, the only path forward will be to absorb the stablecoin supply that wants to exit before UST can start to repeg. There is no way around it, and we propose several remedial measures to aid the mechanism to absorb the supply. So basically, in short terms, he's just going to say, we have to wait this thing out. We have to allow this mechanism to completely absorb the supply of UST and continue to mint Luna and do the things in which it needs to in order to create a balance once we do start to see this panic stopping. And then once this panic stops, then there becomes the route back towards seeing a pegging for UST under the right conditions, of course. So first, we endorsed the community proposal 1164 to increase base pool from 50 million to 100 million SDR, decrease pool recovery block from 36 to 18. This will increase the minting capacity from 293 million to 1200 million. Now, what this basically is going to do is to allow the mechanism to be able to absorb the UST supply much quicker, not making this a better situation, but making it a faster thing in which it increases the speed in which we will see the mechanism and the system absorbing UST. Now, there will be some more ideas that will be discussed over here, so definitely do go to the Terra research forum if you do want to get an idea of how they're going forward, because again, I do believe they're the only ones who can get us out of this shit at this point. Now, with the current on-chain spread, peg pressure, and UST burn rate, the supply overhang of UST should continue to decrease until the parity is reached and spread begin healing. Naturally, this is at a high cost to UST and Luna holders, but we still continue to explore various options to bring in more exogenous capital to the ecosystem, reduce the supply overhang on UST. As we begin to rebuild UST, we will adjust its mechanism to become collateralized, and we're going to talk about this in a second, because this is the only hope that I believe UST has and Luna has for this to become a once again successful project. Now, basically, he just went to go ahead and say that overall that they are a pretty good project. They think that they have a lot of capabilities and potential, but at the end of the day, I want to focus more on the current game plan and not so much of the the kind of hopium in a way. So what we're seeing from Luna, of course, has been, again, that the UST supply, let's kind of summarize this, that the UST supply has been basically getting absolutely absorbed due to the burn UST and minting Luna function. Now, as a result of this mass burning of UST in which we're seeing, as the mechanism in the system does absorb that UST and mint more Luna, that has pretty substantially increased the supply, and as that has happened, we have pretty catastrophically seen the price be affected, of course, because you see, again, the supply increasing increasing, demand decreasing. That is a bad mixture. Okay. Now, what this means going forward is that there's nothing that they can realistically do about it. Now, does this feel like a bit of a targeted attack on Luna? Absolutely. I don't really see that. I wouldn't really expect that something this dramatic with the support that this system has, the lunatics, myself being one of them still, of course, with the support that we've been seeing, it would be pretty difficult for something like this to happen without the help of anything. So it does feel like a little bit of a coordinated attack, but at the end of the day, there is no proof about that, and that might just be a little bit of bullish bias that I have because I'm an investor in Luna. Now, what I will go ahead and say though is that what we are seeing right now is going to be the exact reason and why the future of Luna is hanging in the balance. Okay, I am at a point in which I am not quite sure if Luna is going to recover from this, honestly, because what we've seen from Luna has been some pretty amazing things, and that this mechanism has allowed them to create something so unique that it definitely has put them in a position in which many people were excited and that they were able to offer some great things, such as a 20% yield on Anchor Protocol and, things of that nature. But the issue is that the exact formula and the exact mechanism that put them into the point of success and popularity and fame in which they were in could very possibly be the same mechanism that once fails for good. Okay. Now, the reason that I say this comes down to the overall way in which the ecosystem works, the way in which this thing operates. Now, one thing we have to consider is that the entire ecosystem, the entire Terra ecosystem, and especially Luna itself, is completely reliant on UST. Now, what we have to understand is that the overall ecosystem relies on the demand for UST. We need to see the demand for UST there because that is the only way in which to stabilize the ecosystem. Again, understand that as the demand for UST remains the same, that allows Luna, realistically, say if the demand for UST goes away and nobody wants it and they start burning it and then you start minting more Luna, that is going to, of course, cause what we are seeing now. So it is reliant on people wanting UST, right? Now, let's talk about reasons in which why in the short term we could see some type of recovery for Luna, but I'm definitely skeptical of the long term. Well, in the short term, we're seeing UST at about 52 cents. That's about 48% away. Or that's about a 48% loss from $1 in itself. So there could be over nearly 100% in gains to be made if people are accumulating UST at this point, once the repeg does happen, which I think is very possible. Okay, so in the short term, while we are seeing this thing depeg, there is still going to be some demand, in my opinion, of lunatics who are lunatics, not crazy people, but lunatics, who are going to be willing to purchase UST because they do believe that there is that arbitrage opportunity, especially once the panic does wear off. But whenever we consider the long term of this thing, the massive concern that I have is why would people have demand for UST, right? Say if it does repeg and it gets back up to $1, what is the demand for UST at that point? Because with what we saw right now, we saw millions and millions and hundreds of millions of people get burned just by holding the stablecoin, okay? And so the problem then becomes, where does that demand from UST come from? Because the risk and the amount of people who are going to be skeptical of its potential is, it's going to be quite dramatically. We look at this thing all the time. We can see that at one point it depegged all the way down, towards 47 cents. And whenever people look for stable coins, that is their way out of the risk. That is their way out of the scariness and even the excitement of the market. That is where they want to be stable. That is where they want to find peace. And considering the fact that this stable coin is not going to be able to offer that in a way in which maybe something like USDT, kind of sketchy, but USDC or USDT or DAI, those ones which do remain stable and don't depeg to this nature, I can't understand how UST can compete with them, especially even if they do offer something like 20% on Anchor Protocol, because people felt that burning sensation of when the market starts to really crash, how they could be so quickly impacted and how this ecosystem can crumble. And so considering the fact that that demand may very possibly not be there, and that is what the Luna ecosystem thrives off of, I'm very skeptical of Luna's ability in itself to even recover back up to $50, to $60. I'm just not sure that can happen. But one of the only ways in which I think it can happen is if we do see something like this come to full fruition, in which we see UST's mechanism being fully collateralized. But the issue is there, right? Is that how do they collateralize it? It is an algorithmically backed stablecoin. So I'm not sure how you go ahead and collateralize this stablecoin and completely change the mechanism to the point that something doesn't happen like this again. Because remember, they had thousands and thousands and thousands and billions of dollars in Bitcoin, and that wasn't good enough to be able to repeg this thing in enough time before we started to see the complete, catastrophic crashing of the overall Luna price itself. So I'm not quite sure where this goes, and I'm not quite sure, honestly, how this recovers. But I think number 12 of this thread is the only thing that gets them to a point that they can even compete with other stablecoins in the future, as this does, become the past. And as we do go forward, this is the only thing, again, that I think has the potential to recover and save UST to a point in which people will ever trust it again. Because if you don't trust this stablecoin, it is due to the fact that it's not stable. And if people don't trust UST, the demand for UST decreases. The overall ecosystem is going to be negatively impacted by that. And that is just the way in which this thing was built. They were never under the belief that something of this nature was going to be able to happen. And we can clearly see that everything is possible, and there is something that needs to be done before anyone is going to trust this thing with thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, or even billions of dollars. Because one thing we have to consider is the long-term effects of this, right? Realistically, we look at things like Ethereum. We look at things such as Matic that just got to deal with Meta. We look at things such as Ada Cardano in a way. We look at all these cryptos that are serving as institutional interest. People are interested in them because of the technology and because of the potential they have and the demand they have. And one thing we have to realize is that what institutions are going to trust a crypto that is based around a stablecoin that's not stable? That's the problem, okay? So I am a lunatic still. I have not sold my Luna position. I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. We're here now. I might as well just hold it and see what happens. I'm not going anywhere. But it is completely up to Duquan and his team to figure out the ways in which they can regain the trust of the public. And the path there is not going to be easy. So the best thing that I'm going to do and the best thing that I can say is at this point, the best thing is just to sit back and watch and allow it to happen. If you want to sell and take, recover whatever you can, I don't blame you in the slightest. If you want to completely get rid of your UST while you can, I don't blame you in the slightest. And I think that you are fully justified in doing so, especially if you're not a core believer of the team itself. Personally, at this point, I think what I'm going to do is, again, just sit back and watch and see what their plans are. Once we do start to see the mechanism balance itself out and the whole UST supply being absorbed to the point that it needs to, where do they go from there in order to be able to recover these things? That's what I'm going to sit back and watch out for. And of course, I will continue to update you guys as that does happen. And where do I think this thing goes from here? Personally speaking, I definitely think that Luna can recover to like $10 or something like that. So there can be gains made in the short term as the price does try to regain whatever lost ground it can. But investing in it right now with such an unforeseeable future is definitely a massive risk, and it is something you need to really consider before doing, because right now is probably the most risky time in the entire history of Luna to be investing in it, in my opinion, until the future becomes much more clear. So with that being said, that's just kind of my update, and that's my opinion. I know I sound bearish. I know I'm going to get the FUD comments from the fellow lunatics, but do remember we're in the same community. I just have to be honest, and I would say the majority of us at our core do feel a very similar way. So please don't go too crazy, because I'm just voicing the opinion that most of us have. So with that said, that's going to be about it for today's video. Of course, I hope you guys did enjoy, and I will see you all next time. Peace.